everybody. Welcome to another episode of Theater Tuesday. And this is the show where we like to talk about all things stage. And today we're talking about everything we saw in November. Gonna be a lot of fun. And I'm theater critic Rachel Wagner, and Maren's here.
Hello, how is everyone?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Now you have a lot to catch us up on because you had a whole New York trip.
Yes, I went to
So
the
exciting.
annual American Theater Critics Association conference that we always have in either the first or second weekend of November. Was the second weekend of November this year, and that's where we're trying to. We used to have it the first weekend of November, but we kept hitting the New York Marathon. So we're like, no, we're moving
Yeah.
this to the second weekend. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Did they
so
have
it
a
was
pretty good
fantastic.
turnout?
We did. We had about 50 people there, which was really fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, that is good. That's good. Do they have like lectures and stuff and
We
things to go to,
do.
or?
We have a full day on Friday of panels and lectures and other things, different authors or show panels or things like that. Probably our best thing that we got that Friday was two people from Sweeney Todd and two people from Merrily Real Along, two cast members from each.
Oh, nice.
And my favorite part of that was Ruthann Miles, who plays the beggar woman in Sweeney Todd, um, talked about how she did some research with a psychotherapist. So kind of my whole
Mm.
world's all together.
Yeah.
Um, and researched dissociative identity disorder to understand the beggar woman better, and had developed 9 separate personalities for the beggar woman.
Uh,
And it was just fascinating to listen to her talk about that. And I actually got to meet her and talk to her after that panel and told her that I am a therapist, and I found that whole, and she and
mhm.
I chatted a whole bunch
Yeah.
about psychology and the psychology behind characters and what she did with that role. And I was so moved by that whole idea. So
Actors
that
are
was
the
cool.
best. I love
Yes.
actors.
I
I
know,
mean,
right? But we also did other
that's
things,
great.
like they had authors who've just published, like a book about Sondheim, a book about other things like that. They had games. I won the theater trivia game
Mhm.
with my little partnership. There was the three of us that had gotten a team, and we won the theater
Uh-huh.
game. So I got one of
There you
the free
go.
books by one of the authors. And then on Saturday, we because Saturday usually everyone goes to two shows.
Uh-huh.
And so we only had one event, but it was, they took us to, there's the new Perlman Performing Arts Center, which is down at the World Trade
Oh,
complex.
okay.
And they took us on a tour of that, and it was fascinating, so beautiful. It actually reminded me of the facility at Stratford upon Avon in the London area, where the
Mhm.
Royal Shakespeare Company is.
Mhm.
And the facility can be put as just one big theater or two smaller theaters or three even smaller theaters. It's that versatile that you can change the stage up and change it, so you can have a big, like 1,000 seat theater, or smaller ones up to like a black box. And they have a whole season. I guess they're going to be doing Cats the musical in
Ah,
drag. In drag.
your
Cats in
favorite.
drag. I know, but I don't know, love cats, but cats in drag. I'm like, I might be like morbidly curious
Feels
about
a
that.
little redundant to me at a
Yeah,
certain
it's
point.
so strange, so strange. But they also
That's
wanted it to
funny.
be more of like a community center. So there is a
Uh-huh.
restaurant in the facility. The lounge and everything is open to the public all the time. They have a little
Huh.
small stage in the lounge where they're going to have live musicians and stuff. So if you're down there at the World Trade Center and you want to step inside and listen to live music or go to the restaurant or whatever, all there, and very, very beautiful to have some live theater.
That's cool.
Also had an improv troupe come to one of the panels and talk about how they used to be in New York. They had died off, and then they have are in California, but now they're reopening a facility in New York again. Things like that. And then on Sunday, there's an off-Broadway revival of the show. I can get it to you for wholesale. And we had their whole creative team, and they're at the Classic Stage Company, which is
Mm-hmm.
where Assassins was revived last year. And a couple years ago, I got to see their rendition of Macbeth. I got to review that, and they're just a fabulous little location down in the Union Square area of New York.
Mm-hmm.
So they do all kinds of stuff like that. And then we also just have time to really chat with one another as different theater critics about what's going on in all the different regions. And we talk about, we used to do before COVID regional conferences, and after COVID, we've kind of fallen away from that. So one of the talking, like brainstorming situations was um, doing regional conferences again. And I put it out there that I would, in a heartbeat,
Mm,
host a Salt Lake regional conference, and people
yeah.
seem to be very interested in that. So we're shooting for maybe 2025 to have a theater critics conference here in Salt Lake. So
Well, I would definitely help out in any way
I
I
knew you
can with
would.
that for sure.
I knew you would. So I was, because that's what I
And
told
we
them.
could
I
get
said,
Scott to help. He
yeah,
would for sure.
absolutely. I told them, I said, I've got a
Yeah.
committee. I've got a committee who will help me the second I say the words.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So quick, let's get the goods on all of everything you got to see.
So I first saw Here Lies Love, and I did that on purpose. I wrote out to the publicity team there because it is the very first show on Broadway to have an all Filipino cast, and my children are half Filipino.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out of my way to say, please let me see this show, which
Mm-hmm.
has sadly since closed. It just closed a few days ago. And I adored it. And I know that that's not the case for a lot of other critics. Um, but again, I do think that I benefit from having been to the Philippines, knowing a lot of the political landscape, because it is about Imelda Marcos, and whose husband ruled the Philippines through martial law for quite a while,
I
and
mean,
who's go ahead.
did it feel like Evita-ish kind
It
of? Is
did
it?
a little bit, but also not. And her son is actually currently the president of the Philippines. The Philippines has a very interesting and nuanced political landscape. Um, they showed both sides. They showed both sides, and uh, oh gosh, why did my name just blank? Why did the name just blank? But the person who was martyred for their
Mm,
cause
mm-hmm.
at right before they were toppled in power. He the airport in the Philippines is named for him, so I'm so embarrassed that I've forgotten his name. But and then his wife became president after Marcos was toppled. Um, the people's revolt that happened, they show all of that, and in fact, the very last song of the show is all direct words from the people's revolt.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the most beautiful parts of the show is when they open up the scrim at the very back and show this mural of just all the different things that happened in the Philippines during that revolt in the early 1980s. And so it wasn't just a lot of the criticism that people, especially people who haven't seen it, were saying is that we should not glorify Imelda. But that's the thing, is they don't necessarily do it. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that you sit there and you get into the glamour of it, especially because it's set kind of like in a nightclub, and they've got standing room only people who are dancing to all the fun music and whatever else. And so you get lost into the glamour of it, and it kind of shows how you can get lost into the glamour
Mm-hmm.
of a famous person, and then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, maybe I shouldn't be lost in this, because you start to see the downfall, you start to see the drug use, you start to see all the other things, and then you realize what has happened, and oh wait, I just got lost in all this fun and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see what had happened. And it was really brilliantly done. And I said in my review about this one of the things that's very interesting, and a topic that I just feel very passionately about, is whether or not shows are for a New York audience, especially because New York prices are going out of control. And this show just feels like it belongs in Vegas for so many
Mm-hmm.
reasons.
Mm-hmm.
It's shorter, it's got that Vegas flair. The Filipino community in Vegas is huge. There are direct flights from the Vegas airports to the Philippines every
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm.
But also it would attract people who aren't Filipino to seeing the show. It just is a show that belongs in Vegas and would have a
Mm-hmm.
sit down run. And I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the other shows that I saw while I was there was Shucked, and I saw Shucked when it was here in Salt Lake as well. I wanted to see the change. And Shucked is closing in January and launching a national tour. And I had the same opinion of when I saw Shucked in Salt Lake, that it's not necessarily a New York show. I think it's going to kill on tour. I think it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
fantastic on tour. And then when it hits
Yeah.
the regional scene, It's a
Mhm.
fantastic show, but it speaks to middle America way more than it speaks to New York. And I'm talking as someone who's lived in middle America and
Yeah.
lived in New York. I've done both.
I know that parts of Here Lies Love are that the parts of the stage are they have standing room only
Yeah.
for parts of it. And
Mhm.
so was that like how was the formation of the stage? Did that really impact?
Oh,
Was it
it was
different? And
so amazing and
yeah.
so impactful. I loved watching all of it. Now, because of some back issues, I did not stand. I was on the front row of these little like booth type seats that were so cool. But watching the people do it, and they had these like movers that they called them who helped everybody know when they were supposed to move and everything. But then, like the actors and actresses would interact with the people standing and moving and dancing and everything with it. And it really, again, when you're talking about this being a political thing, and them shaking the hands with people and whatever else. And
Mm,
my ex-husband's family were divided with who were Marcos supporters and who weren't. And there's a lot of nuanced reasons why. We look at it from an outside Western perspective and we just think, well, he was a dictator. Of course, you hate a dictator. But if you
right.
don't live there, you don't understand where jobs were coming from or why
Right.
this and that and whatever else. And so it's not cut and dry, just like how our politics are not cut and dry. And so it's fascinating to watch that and watch how, you can be enamored by someone like Imelda, you can be enamored by someone like Ferdinand,
Hmm.
and watch it just then kind of blow up in your
Yeah.
face. And it's
Well, and
fascinating.
that unique staging also that feels a little Vegasy, I think,
Oh yeah,
too.
no, it
Yeah.
it was absolutely it was a Vegas show. It was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Vegas show.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
And
So what
then
was another one that you saw?
I saw Jaja's African hair braiding, and that was
Mm.
fantastic. Uh, it was based, and again, kind of, I sought out that one because I wrote my dissertation for my doctorate degree on refugee women and job searching in the United States, and it was all about people from Africa coming and setting up hair braiding salons. And it took some twists and turns. It was mostly a delightful comedy, but it took some very emotional twists and turns that you didn't expect. Like almost gut punching, slap you in the face. Fantastic. But like the hair, the costumes, the humor, so beautiful. But the storyline, just amazing. Just amazing. And I really hope, and straight plays are always shorter on Broadway, so it has closed, but it was a limited run. It was supposed to close. But I do hope that this gets produced all over.
I could see like Salt Lake Acting Company. It seems
Mhm,
like
mhm.
that it would be. I would
Um,
love to see it there.
Yeah, and the University of Utah did
Mm,
another play like this that I really loved called Eclipsed a few years back. So I could see universities
yeah.
that have the right population doing something like this too. So I can't wait to see it done much more often because it was honestly probably the most moving thing that I saw on my trip.
Hmm.
Like if I
Hmm.
had to pick a favorite, I would probably pick that.
Hmm.
I adored Hair Lies Love, but I do think that the Jaja's African hair braiding was my favorite.
Hmm.
Then I saw I Need That with Danny DeVito. And
Oh yeah, I saw your review of that.
yeah, it was okay.
Yeah.
He was
He's in it with his daughter, right?
with his daughter. Yeah,
Okay,
he,
yeah.
he and his daughter. Um, I think that this is one time where me being a therapist was not necessarily great, because they were dealing with issues of hoarding and then issues of family life and whatever else, and I was a little too critical about that. And so it had nothing to do with their acting or anything, but just like they solved the issue of hoarding way too quickly.
Mm,
And as
mhm.
the show ended and everything, I just thought, well, that apartment, that house is going to be a disaster next week.
Right.
You haven't really dealt with it. And so it was just that it was tough. It was tough to
Mm.
kind of deal with, me being like, stop being a clinician, Maren, and just enjoy a show.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I saw Gutenberg, and that one was just for fun. I wasn't reviewing it, and it was very fun.
Yeah.
I know you got to see that. You got to review that, and
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. There's not much more to say about that. It's fun.
Yeah.
And then I went off Broadway and saw Titanic, which is just a parody of Titanic, very irreverent. Don't take the children. Um, but
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
So much fun. So much fun. And their merchandise, they're just everything, like, just
I've
and
heard good things.
I
My friend
needed it.
Jax has been
Yeah.
it a couple times.
I
Yeah.
needed it. I needed, after everything else that I had seen and done and whatever else,
Yeah.
I just needed an evening to laugh and hear Celine Dion music. I mean, it made fun of Titanic the musical, it made fun of musicals, it made fun of Celine Dion, and it just delightful fun. So yeah, and then of course Shucked. So that's
Yeah.
what I saw in New York. All those.
That sounds like a great trip.
It was
Really
fantastic.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's talk about some of the other stuff that I saw. I mean, for me, it was a light month.
I saw a few things here too, but yeah, it was kind of
Yeah,
light on the Utah side.
because I had so many movie screenings this month. I had one almost every day, even on Sundays sometimes. It was
Mhm.
intense. Getting ready for, because you got to have every Oscar contender watched by,
Right.
we make our nominations on the 15th of December for Utah Film Critics Association.
Oh,
And so I had to try everything in my power to watch everything. And, obviously, like, the studios want to get as much screened on the big screen for us before
right.
that. So anyway, it's just been crazy. But I did see, so I saw Christmas Carol twice, and I kind of set a goal that I'm going to try to see it as many times as I can, because I think I want to do just a full, either a full episode of Theater Tuesdays or just a full article
Mhm.
comparing all the different versions that I
Yeah,
get
I
to
was gonna
see.
say, because there are so
Yeah.
many different versions. I personally have a favorite, but I haven't
Yeah.
seen any this year. But yeah, like,
Well, at the Parker Theater, they have their own version.
yeah,
And it
I
is
saw that.
so good. And
Very
it's
cool.
I reviewed it last year for UTBA. Scott reviewed it this year. We both raved, both loved it. So good. What they do with the lighting and the way that they create the ghosts is so, like, just great. And they do little things to add to the story, like you actually see Jacob Marley and you see him die, and you see there's just like little additions to the story that I think add a
Right.
lot. It's great. And then I saw it was very exciting because I saw it at Hale Center Theater Orem, and I, for years, that was my go-to
Mhm.
for Christmas Carol. I would go
Sure.
to Hale Orem, and they had a version that was really solid. And I think it's very tricky reviewing these holiday productions, because you're
Yep.
kind of, in a way, you feel like, well, I'm criticizing your tradition, I'm
Mhm.
critiquing your tradition.
Right. No, that's very
It's like
true.
going into
Very
someone's
true.
house and being like, your Christmas trees and
Yeah,
that, like, it just
that's
feels
fair.
weird. It
That's
feels
fair.
weird. And so I was kind of a little bit anxious about it, because I do have a nostalgia for it. And anyway, and so I was completely shocked to it was a completely new version,
Mm.
completely new adaptation done by the director.
Oh, wow.
And I guess I didn't know at the time when I wrote my review that it was this particular type of called the chamber theater, where
Okay.
they use quotation, like almost the entire script is quotations from the book, and it's this particular style. So even like when, like, little Fran comes in to the schoolboy Ebenezer, like that's direct quoting from the book. And it was a little bit jarring for me at first because I'm like, why is everybody quoting? But especially once I learned after, it was even after I wrote my review, I learned that, oh, okay, this was a whole different approach, but it was so interesting. And it had the feel of a old time radio program, which I love, old time radio. And they had all these Foley devices, like when Jacob Marley comes in,
I love a Foley operator. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, you'll love it. Then the different townspeople were there, and they had like chains that they were rustling and different things they were doing, and they would sometimes shout out different parts of the text. It was just really creative and really different, and I was expecting something very samey,
right?
And so it was very exciting to get something unexpected. So I definitely would recommend it. And I was kind of proud of them. Like, way to go.
Awesome. That's really cool. I love to hear new adaptations because there's only so many. So that's fantastic that they're trying new things.
And it's Hale Orm's 250th production, which is kind of amazing.
That is really cool. Good for them.
Yeah. So I saw that. I saw White Christmas at Center Point. And that was fun. They always do, a good job. Dancing is always, good. Yes. I have seen it better. I've seen White Christmas better, but it was good. And then I saw Elf the Musical at Hale. And I particularly wanted to go because Dave Smith, who is a former teacher of mine, he was playing Buddy. And so I always try to support him. And he was great. He's perfect for that role. He's got like a youthful energy to him that makes him really good for that. And Kelly Coombs was playing Jovi, and they were in Daddy Longlegs, which is a favorite of mine.
Right. Yeah.
So they have great chemistry. And anyway, so yeah, it's cute. And it's oddly the only place that's doing Elf the Musical.
Yeah, that is strange. Last year they did it everywhere, it seems.
Yeah.
So
I don't love the adaptation. It's fine, but I don't know. I just think the songs are kind of like, but it's cute enough, I guess.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years, each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
And then I actually saw Addams Family at Corner Canyon High School. A friend of mine invited me to go, asked me to go. And said that, the kids would get a big kick out of my writing, thing on it. And it was outstanding. And I was so proud of them because there was no sound problems at all, which is usually
that's amazing. High schools and sound. Yeah.
Because not only is it hard just with budgets and stuff and things, but they're usually in these huge auditoriums. That high schools have. And so it makes it extra hard. But no, they had no audio problems.
That's amazing. That's really amazing because I saw 2 high school productions this month. And my sister teaches at Clearfield High, and they did Matilda, and they did a fantastic job. But because it's my sister, I happen to know that they have a significant sound problem at the Clearfield High Auditorium. And I also happen to know that it's a $2,000 fix that their administration is just not giving to them. Yeah. So every time I have to just be like, I know it's a sound problem, and I know they don't have the money for the fix. So, you just breathe in and breathe out and be like, that it sucks that the schools don't fix the problem because these kids are so talented. The kids that in this production of Matilda were just amazing.
Yeah. It's frustrating too, because you think like, what's $2,000 in a football program?
Right. Exactly. But yeah, they didn't fix it. But so I got to see Matilda, and then I got to see my daughter's school did Camelot. And my daughter was head of costumes.
Oh, that's fun.
So she got to help with the design of the costumes. And so that was really fun to see all of her costumes on stage.
I love Camelot.
Yeah.
I know some parts probably are outdated, but I still love it.
It was just very long.
It is
Like
long.
it's so long.
That's true. That's true. They did a great. Hale Orem did in 2022. They did Camelot, and it was
These kids
so
at
good.
Syracuse High did fantastic. They are such talented kids at Syracuse
I've been
High.
to a show there. It's Syracuse.
Yeah, they're so good, but
Mhm.
my goodness, was it long.
It is. Yeah, that's true. So I also saw The Secret Garden at BYU.
I love that show so
And
much.
yeah, I mean, this music is so beautiful.
It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. And it was interesting because it was on their stage on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not theater on the round exactly, but
Yeah, I know which theater
you know
you're
what I
talking
mean?
about.
Like, they have the
Yeah.
bleacher seats and
Yep.
and so they don't really have any space for sets and stuff, and so they have to kind of be creative, and so that was interesting to see sort of a more modern take on, like, they could just have one tree instead of the secret, the garden. So that was interesting. And the both of the child actors were outstanding, which is a huge thing in that show, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to have the best.
Yeah. And let's see. Oh, I actually saw 3 versions of Christmas Carol. I forgot. I saw it because I decided, I'm going to try to see as many. So I went and saw it at Hale Sandy.
Okay.
And this is exactly what I was expecting to find at Hale Orem. But then I got something new and fresh and brave. This is like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like totally fine. It's totally well done. Great Scrooge. I really liked the watercolor backgrounds. Beautiful. This is in their Jewel Box theater.
Right.
And it's if you want to go see, Christmas Carol and well done, it's a great option.
Right.
But I think the Parker and the Orem one, if you're thinking, I've seen that so many times, I don't want to see it again, then one of those
are the
more
ones.
interesting.
My favorite music versions of A Christmas Carol this year, Hope Box is doing it. It's the Aarons and Flattery one, and Ogden Musical Theater did it, but they've already closed.
Yeah, they were only open for not very long.
Yeah,
so I missed them.
Yeah. I also saw the touring company of My Fair Lady.
The Eccles.
Yeah, the Eccles.
Oh, I want to talk about this actually.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. My Fair Lady is on my list of shows that I don't love.
But I want to talk because I heard that they changed the ending. They staged the ending.
They've changed the staging of the ending. This is back from the Lincoln Center revival. This is the touring company of the Lincoln Center revival, which was 2016, 2018. I'm probably getting the dates wrong, but it is that revival. And they've changed the ending, and it's I looked it up afterwards to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. It's strange. So Pygmalion, which My Fair Lady's based on.
Yeah.
In Pygmalion, Eliza doesn't return. Spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know My Fair Lady. Eliza does not return.
Yeah.
But in My Fair Lady, she does. So in this one, she comes back and does the same thing that she does in My Fair Lady, and he asks where her slippers are and everything else. But then she appears to walk off the stage. And that was supposed to be this feminist moment, is basically what they're saying. But if you wanted to make it a feminist moment, and this is what myself and the person from our blog who wrote the review were saying, you should just have not had her return. Like, because it's confusing, because it doesn't.
Yeah, that is confusing.
And it doesn't look like, because she doesn't walk out the door. She walks to the front of the stage and then walks off. And so the way that you imagine a stage and stuff like that, she could be walking into somewhere else in the house. She could be doing anything else. So if they had her turn around and walk out the door, then she walked out the door, and that's feminist. But and then I've read online that some people said that the director meant for it to be a dream, that she only returned in a dream, or I've read all kinds of different theories about what it means.
Right.
But that's all they are, is theories. And I want to talk about the other show that I saw after My Fair Lady, because I'm not someone, a lot of people are purists and they just want their show to look like their show, kind of like what you were saying about you don't want to criticize someone's Christmas traditions. some people are very uncomfortable with changing things up, and I'm not one of those people. In
Uh-huh.
fact, another thing that Ruthie Ann Miles said in our clinic that we went to was that um you shouldn't do a revival, especially on a big platform like Broadway, if you don't have something new to say,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's important to have something new to say as a director. So I don't mind having something new to say, but if you don't make it clear what you're saying, then it just is confusing and you just leave. And that's how I felt at the end of My Fair Lady is that, and I contrast that between from I got to go down and see The Crucible at Snow College. Now I went to Snow College way back in the 90s, and it is a tiny little nothing townie from Utah. And back when I was there, it was even more of a nothing town. Now they have a Walmart. They didn't have a Walmart when I was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So it's booming
The
in the
first
world.
review from St. Pete County on
Yeah, our first
UTBA.
review from San Pete County, and I was excited to do it because I loved my experience in from Utah, which is really funny to a lot of people because New York is my favorite city, and you can't get something more opposite than New York
Yeah.
City than from Utah. But I loved my experience at Snow College. But when I was there, there was just this little tiny nothing theater called the Crane Theater, and it was nothing. But now they have an Eccles Performing Arts Center that's humongous compared to the Crane. I was so in shock because I had not been in there. I had not been in there since I had not seen this performing arts center. And the professor that directed was lovely. He showed me and my kids around, and my daughter's interested in theater, so I know he was kind of schmoozing a little bit to see if she'll come to theater down there. But he noticed my 13-year-old drumming on everything, and he's like, "Are you a musician?" And she very much is. So he took her to the music side, and we found some percussionists who were all like, "Oh, come see all of our percussionists." It was fantastic.
That's
But
great.
this production of The Crucible was so fantastic, and he had taken some risks. It was not like any Crucible I'd ever seen before. It was set mostly in the woods, and he had taken a bunch of his students to be just general ensemble. But I talked to him about it at the intermission, and he had said that he had assigned each of these general ensemble to be ghosts. They were dressed in black and they were ghosts, and they each were someone who had died in Salem. And so they had character descriptions. They were supposed to research this person who had died in Salem, why they were accused of witchcraft, what their trajectory was, and how. And so they all had all these character arcs and analysis, and you could watch them in the show. And it was so fascinating to watch them because none of them had a word, but you could see these spirits, and it felt like every single one of them had a story. I was so fascinated by this production, and it costs $10 to see.
Nice.
$10. It was probably one of the best. It was better than I Need That on Broadway. I'm sorry. Danny DeVito was lovely, but it was just these kids, and there was some gender bent casting, which I actually really loved, and I talked to the professor about this because it wasn't like, and I love all kinds of different casting, but it wasn't one of these like gender bent casting and we were going to force it. Like, one of the girls who was playing a man was dressed like a man, and it was because that's how she was comfortable. But one of the girls who was playing a man was dressed like a woman, and that's because that's how she was comfortable. But it was literally that most of the time in theater departments, you have more women than men. And these girls were obviously the best ones for the roles. They were just so phenomenal. And he was like, I talked to the professor, and he was like, they were the best ones. And I'm tired of having to cast mediocre guys when I've got fantastic girls. And I was like, that is so fantastic and real.
Good.
And there was no singing. And it just, and they addressed them as men. Like, they said, sir, they didn't change the pronouns or anything like that. They just did it and just let them act.
Mm-hmm.
And for a second, you're looking at that and you're like, well, he's saying sir, but that's a woman dressed as a woman. But then you just let your imagination take over, and she was so good. She was so good. And it was one of the best parts of the show. And I loved every minute of it. So I was like, I'll come down for your next production. I don't care that I have to drive 2.5 hours. It's so good.
That's how you know it's a good show, when it's worth the drive.
Yeah, I got home at 1:30 in the morning, and I'm an old lady, and I was exhausted the next day, but it was so worth it. And I literally was shocked because, I mean, this was not the professor that was there when I was at Snow College, and the professor that I was there was fine, but the production value, it's a leaps and bounds better program than when I was there.
That's great. Well, speaking of driving a long ways, I the last one that I saw local in November was I saw She Loves Me at Heritage. And it's
Yeah.
just over an hour drive for me.
Yeah,
So,
that's only a
uh,
30-minute drive for me, but yeah,
yeah.
for you a lot longer. Yeah.
But I would highly recommend it. I
I'm
mean,
actually friends with the director.
oh really? She did
Yeah.
a great job.
Yeah.
And I loved both of the leads, which is essential in this show, obviously, that they have
My
good
daughter's name is
chemistry.
Amalia.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so
So
cool.
She
I
Loves Me.
love this show. It's
It's a great show.
it's hard to do wrong. I just love
Yeah.
it. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
all iterations of the story. I
Oh,
just
for sure.
and I think it's the best thing I've ever seen from them, from
Awesome.
Heritage. It has the roughness that you expect from this is a very community amateur theater, but this
Built
is
in an
charming.
old church.
An old
In an
church.
old church. I
Yeah.
love it. I love stuff like that. Yeah.
And the guy who was playing George, he'd only done, I think, one other play before. And you could feel that a little bit, but he had a swagger to him. He had
I love
that
it.
was just really charming, and I really liked him a lot. And the Amalia was great, and I thought the Iona was excellent. She was probably, just as far as talent, she was probably the best singer of the entire cast. But I just love it. It's just such a great story. I mean, there's something so romantic about the idea of two people falling in love over their words.
Yeah.
You know,
just by writing.
just by writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I highly recommend checking out She Loves Me It. And it was fun. It's a nice because it's pretty Christmassy.
Yeah. Oh, it's a
Nice
very
other
Christmassy
option
show.
for the holidays.
Yeah. And I any more that we can get, like, not that I don't love Christmas Carol. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're talking about any kind of adaptation, the Muppets Christmas Carol is the best adaptation of the Christmas Carol.
It's really good.
But like but sometimes we get stuck in the same old when it comes to Christmas stories. So I really wish that more people would do She Loves Me in their rotation of Christmas stuff.
Me too.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
Well, real quick, I just want to talk about Christmas in Connecticut because so we just saw that, both of us, last night.
So technically December, but yes, we did.
Pioneer Theater Company. And it was an interesting experience for me because I love the movie. If you look at my Letterboxd, you see it's one of my top 4 picks. So it's one I love. And I mean, I'm probably the only person in that whole auditorium who was like, whoa, they changed that, and they changed that, and they changed that. And because most people don't care, or maybe they've seen it one time, like
I really can't recall if I've seen it. Like I know the White Christmas movie by heart, but I can't recall if I've seen Christmas in Connecticut. So yeah.
And so that was a little bit of a challenge for me because I had to be like, okay, I have to set that aside. I have to try my best, but it's hard, and
It is
especially
hard.
when it's something that you love. And just as she in the movie, she ends up with this soldier. I mean, that's how different it is.
Right.
Totally
I remember reading that. Yeah.
And so yeah, but it was charming. It was sweet.
Very
it was
charming.
Funny. I particularly think that second act is where it finds its groove.
Yeah. Although my husband came with me last night. We have season tickets to Pioneer, and he thought that ornament song was fantastic. He just he chuckled at that ornament song. I love the chemistry song. I thought the chemistry song was fantastic.
That was the highlight for me. Chemistry song. Agreed. I felt like it got kind of noises off energy.
Yeah. Yep.
In that, all these different couples,
and then how
doors opening, closing,
For me too, and for what you're talking about with the movie, long ago I realized that I had to the only way I could become a good critic or a decent critic or whatever you want to say was to learn how to let go of that and allow adaptations to be adaptations. I've taught my children to say that we're theater blessed because we
Mhm.
get to go to New York so
Yeah.
often and we get to see cool things and whatever else. And you can't lean onto one thing so much as this is the gold standard and then become a good theater critic. Like I lived in New York for a few years, and it happened to be really this great time in theater when, like, I was there when Wicked opened. And so I saw Wicked with the original cast. And how can I ever critique a touring company of Wicked when I'm comparing it to Adina and Kristen if I can't step away and be like, no,
No.
every adaptation, everything is worthwhile. And so it's the
Mhm.
same thing, especially when it comes to movies and books, because I am a big reader. Like, that reading is actually my main way of learning and knowledge and whatever else. And I have to very much, when I look at an adaptation of things, especially when it's a movie from a book, be like, of course the movie is going to be different than the book, Maren. You have to take a deep breath and realize it's its own medium, and they're not going to get all of the book in the movie. And so then I do the same thing with a musical and be like, okay, this is the stage adaptation. And I see it a lot too when people do the stage version of The Sound of Music and all they've ever seen is the movie, and they flip out. And, my little theater
Yeah.
history brain goes, well, the stage version was first.
Right.
So it really was the movie that messed it up. But most people only know the movie version. And so they're mad and they're like, well, why is this community theater messing up The Sound of Music? And it's like, And then I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, well, we all just have to take a deep breath and critique
Mhm.
what we're watching as a
Yeah.
whole new thing.
Well, it's always hard to not kind of critique the because it's not the thing that you wanted. Because I
Yes,
do think that with Christmas in Connecticut, I do think that there are interesting things that they could have done.
sure.
And I feel like in some of their choices were sort of the most generic choices that they could have
Sure.
made. But
Sure.
it's not bad. And I think that if I was just like, if I had never seen the movie, I would probably be like, this is so fun because I love rom-coms and I love,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so but it was just like, oh, well, I actually think in some ways the original film and some of the choices it makes are a little edgier in a weird
Mhm.
way,
Yeah.
than like sort of the more bland ways they made it to an empowering woman kind of,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
And it's only,
it was a very interesting experience because
yeah.
well, and also I not only did I have the expectations because of the movie, which I had just seen the day before, which was probably a mistake in retrospect. I thought, oh, this will
Sure.
be, I'll have it, but having it so fresh in my mind was
Yeah.
probably a mistake. But I had just seen it the day before the movie, and my friend Tim Leninger had given it a rave review last year
Mhm.
in Connecticut, the very
Right.
first world premiere of it.
That's what I was gonna say,
So
isn't it? I think it's only the second time it's been
yeah,
performed. So
yep,
I think that they're still working on it and
yeah,
fine tuning it, because when, like, with Shucked, we had the world premiere of Shucked, and when I got to New York, there were changes. So
yeah.
I imagine
Oh,
as
that's
this,
interesting.
yeah,
Most of my feedback would be about that first act.
yeah, I
I
imagine that there will be changes to this
yeah,
script because it's still a new script, and that's the way it works when we have these regional premieres. Is there's the writers are still changing.
yeah, because I think it takes too long to get to the house. They
Yeah,
need to get there faster. And in the
sure,
movie, it is there's not all this backstory,
sure,
about, and I that would be my big like
sure.
critique to them.
And
I would
that, I
say
think that
get
that's
to the
fair.
house sooner.
I think that that's fair criticism, and that's absolutely why they do things like this in smaller markets before they get to the bigger markets. And so
Hmm.
that's probably exactly what the writers are looking for, because there was things like that. They had tightened up Shuck. It was shorter, and there were
Mm,
certain things that were gone from the Salt Lake production that were like fluff stuff that I was like kind of glad to see gone when
yeah,
I saw it again. So,
that's interesting. That's
but
interesting.
movie adaptations in general with musicals, we're gonna see. My husband has been laughing about the fact that we're seeing too The Color Purple, which was a movie, then they made it into a
Yeah.
musical, and now in December we're getting a movie of that musical that was made from a movie. And then in January we're doing the same thing from Mean Girls,
Yeah.
which was a movie that they made into a musical, and now they're making a movie of the musical that was from the movie.
Yeah. Well, and
Whoa.
Hollywood is they now are scared of musicals because
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because a bunch of them have underperformed, like in the Heights and things like that. But now they put out the trailer for Mean Girls, and there's barely a song. There's like the very beginning, a
of My
little bit
Name
of a
is
song.
Regina
Yeah, that's
George.
it.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, if I watched this trailer, I would have absolutely no interest in this movie at all. Like, why? I can just watch the original. Why would I want to watch this?
Yeah, it's really funny to read the Reddit comments because I forget that not everyone is obsessed with musicals. Because that's not my world.
Right.
And the people in Reddit are just like, why are they remaking this movie? I heard it's a musical. And
They
I'm
made
like,
it look
"Wait, what?"
so bland. I'm just like, what? Why did they do that? I mean,
How do you not
it's
know
so
this is a
bizarre.
musical? What? What do you think? It's just so funny to me that they have no idea that this is a musical.
Yeah, and Wonka, they made it seem like it's not a musical. It is a musical.
Really? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
That's interesting to know. 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that that one was a musical.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like all of these things where it's just like, wait a second, because I agree with you. I do think Hollywood's afraid of the musical, like afraid that people are going to walk out because, oh my gosh, I can't take the singing.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's just been a bunch in a row that didn't do that well.
The other thing
I-
to know for people to know is that Waitress, the pro shot, is in theaters this weekend.
Yeah, I got to get my ticket.
Yeah, my daughter and I have got ours, so yeah, very exciting.
It'll be really fun. Well, if any of y'all watching get a chance to go to Christmas Connecticut, definitely let us know what you think. And it'd be interesting if you get to watch the movie, what you think.
I think I'm gonna sit down and watch the movie and see the difference. I found it utterly charming.
Yeah, it was.
I at first, when it first started, you'll probably get a chuckle out of this. When it first started, I was like, is this Hallmark movie the musical? Because that's what it felt like in the beginning. But then I felt like it was not just Hallmark movie the musical, but I felt like it got more into other things too. But I felt like it was charming.
And I am actually going to be interviewing the writers of the book tomorrow for Hallmarky's podcast. So
that is very cool.
I'm really I'm excited to get a chance to kind of talk to them about this and why they made the choices they did.
Yeah, and you can even say, hey, tighten up the first act a little bit. No, I think that it was very charming, and like you were saying with some of the other stuff, like add this to the round of stuff we have for Christmas shows. Yeah, because it was lovely. I had a great time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let us know, and I'll put once that interview gets posted. Actually, I think it will be posted on Hallmarkies the same day as this is getting posted.
Cool. Very cool.
So I'll put a link. But so you check that out and let us know what you think, and check out all the episodes Theater Tuesdays. And Maren, where can people follow you?
On TikTok, I'm Doc Broadway, and on Instagram and Facebook, I'm just Maren Swenson. And then at Utah Theater Bloggers, you can see all of our reviews there.
Right. Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and at rachelsreviewstheater.com. Check that out. And also, if you were listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That helps a lot. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. I have a playlist of all of the Theater Tuesday content. And thanks so much, everybody. And we hope you're all doing well. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.